a bit late to the party, so to say, on the information-wise, but I think it's still very prevalent. What am I talking about? Obviously, if you haven't seen the title of the video, we're talking about Games Workshop. Now, a while ago I did a video about how, you know, the game was getting too expensive, they're not attracting enough new players. I think they're putting off a massive casual market. Board gamers are not doing it because they've stopped pretty much supporting all the small games they had. There's no longer... The game itself is massively unbalanced. But as you can see here, we've got an orc army. All these boys in that battle truck, or battle wagon, sorry, cost me about 30 to 40 pounds. There's still a couple more boys coming as well, and I managed to get the new war boss from Sanctum's Reach because he was really, really good. He looks really good. So I'm not going to sit here and say I know how to fix GW's problems, even though it's going to sound like saying I am, because this is an outsider's perspective looking in, and from an outsider's perspective it really does look like that the upper levels in GW don't really know what they're doing, because GW always say, we're not a rules company, we're a models company. And I'm like, but people buy your models to play with the rules. So the first thing GW really need to get their head around is they need to start playtesting. And it's absolutely insane that they don't playtest the stuff before they release it, because you get the situations of some armies are ridiculously weak, and then some armies are ridiculously strong that they can basically only play against themselves. You know, you only ever see, you know, like people who have Taudar armies, which is Tau and Eldar mixed together. You know, I would never play against somebody who's fielding an army of that, because there's no way my boys would win. They'd get absolutely nailed before they even got there. You know, you're literally talking turn 3, I think it'd be all GG. So they really need to address balancing issues, and the best way to do that is playtesting. That's the first thing. Now, at the beginning of the video I did say that they sort of lost the casual market, and yes they have, because the problem is that, and it's the same with fantasy, is if you want to play a good game of either 40k or Warhammer Fantasy, for 40k you've got to have at least a 2,000 point army. And in Warhammer Fantasy, from what I've seen now, you've got to at least have a 2,500 points to get a decent game. And the problem is that costs a heck of a lot of money to even assemble armies. Now, yes, there's eBay. I mean, I think I've got incredibly lucky with what I got, and I managed to snag a few deals, and the only reason I got the battle wagon was because wagon was spelt wrong. But so how do you attract these players back? Well, ironically, the answer's already there. They already have the system and the models to be able to do it. If I was in charge, the first thing I'd do is I'd bring back Rogue Trader rules. Small scale, skirmish, you only need 12 models, job's done. Because then that can almost, again, act as a gateway drug. Because, and then you can even make money off that by making Rogue Trader specific models. And then if you wanted to, you can say, well, if you're going to use this, you know, hero from Rogue Trader, then here are the rules to use him in 40k. As, you know, so it's doable, and there's a lot of conversion they could potentially do. For example, people who have, you know, armies already can play Rogue Trader. All they need to do is, you know, pick up the rule book, and then they can use their all existing armies, you know, the Marines and whatnot, to play the game. It makes perfect sense to do it. And again, Warhammer Fantasy bring back Mordheim, because, as I've said before, and I think it's pretty much the general opinion of most people, Mordheim was the best game GW have ever done. They can still get the rules online, but miniatures are ridiculously hard to get now. You've really got to troll through eBay, or get lucky and drop on someone when you go to an event. But they are really hard to come by, Mordheim figures now. So that's what I wish would happen with particularly like the small games. I'd even love to see the return of Gorka Morka. That would be quite fun. But then, you know, what else they could do? Well, first thing they could do, ironically, is reinstate a Twitter page for GW. Because at the moment, and a Facebook page as well, get back on social media, because what they've done is, rather than they handle themselves, what they've done is they've cut themselves off. And now every single store has their own Twitter, Facebook page. And they now have to deal with that on an individual basis. And I think that's... I don't really think that's fair, really, to the store managers. I'm sure there'll be a couple of them that will come on and say it's all right, but I really do think personally that's a bit unfair, just to sort of lump it all on them, when the player base now feels massively disconnected from GW. They don't feel, again, that their concerns about the game and whatnot are being heard. So how does this, you know, because again, you're missing back on, you know, huge player feedback. You know, market research, all they literally have to do is release a thing through Facebook saying, you know, what are your favourite armies, what do you like about the game, what don't you like about the game, and so on and so on. So there's various things they could, again, do through social media, and they've really upped the video content. Not as much as they could be doing, I'll say that now. I think from what they used to be doing a couple of years ago, it's massively improved. But again, I would absolutely love to work for your marketing department and help out with those videos, because I could improve your content so much, because there's so much more you could potentially be doing video wise. So the next problem I'd love to see again addressed is GW need to start sponsoring tournaments again, because again it gets them back into interacting with the customers again, because everyone, at least from who I've spoken to, always feels that there's a disconnect between them and the company. And I think for this type of company, everyone is a bit concerned as to, you know, what would happen. Because let's just say, worst case scenario, next week GW announce bankruptcy. What happens? Games Workshop is a strong enough brand that they will get bought by someone. Now everyone says, oh, Hasbro will buy them. I don't know if Hasbro will buy them, but it will get bought. So I don't think that's not going to be a problem because they make money. The problem is, it's the decisions at the top. For example, one of the things I've said they need to do, they need to start investing in 3D printing, because 3D printing is going to make, not make, has already made model making a whole lot cheaper. You know, I've seen some 3D printed models, and you know, let me just take this up for a second. This is really stiff, and you know, but 3D printed models are a bit flexible. There's a bit of flex in them, so if they're dropped, they're not as more likely to break. And we've all had times where, you know, we've dropped a model or something off the table, and you know, the arm end breaks, you know, or the sword ends up breaking, and we've all been there. But again, 3D printing solves that massively, and I know a lot of people still have huge reservations about all the Finecast fiasco, because all you were getting was a blob, and you were just like, I don't even know what model this is. And I think a lot of people still hold quite a resentment over that. But GW are incredibly lucky that they have such a loyal fan base. And I really do think they've got to be careful that they don't push their luck, because they are surviving on a lot of goodwill they have built up over many, many years. And the last thing I'd want to see is, again, GW go bankrupt or just die. You know, no one wants to see that, because they've done so much for the hobby in general. But ironically, it seems to be the decisions at the top which are making a mess. Again, that's an outsider perspective looking in, so, you know, who knows. But as an example, I'm just going to use Sheffield. Now, Games Workshop in Sheffield, you've got their store, but you've also got The Outpost and Wargames Emporium. So that's two directly other competing model shops. Now, not only do they say, now they both sell Warhammer stuff and 40k stuff, but they also sell other games. And indeed, The Outpost has massive tables where you can play the games of any shape, size and description you want. You can pretty much go in any day of the week and have a game. Wargames Emporium, not so much. But you have a ridiculous problem, because what GW says, any retailer who isn't us can do 20% off. The GW store can't. Now, yes, they're still selling their product at the end of the day, but what about the GW store? They can't compete against that. You know, I spoke to the manager, and he even said himself, you know, we can't compete against that. You know, they're kicking us before we even do anything. And then one of the biggest problem is the difference between the GW actual stores and the internet stores. The internet, again, they get offers, exclusives, that, again, they're not allowed, that GW don't pass on to the stores. Because, again, then you'd be selling through people more. And again, remember that a brick and mortar store that they have now is potentially the only link to GW. And even then, there's almost little to no contact. And it would be an absolute shame, because the way that GW will end up going bankrupt if they lose faith with their customers, and they have built up a heck of a lot of faith over the years. You know, there are loads of people out there now who played GW, Warhammer or 40k since it first came out. They're there. Your customers are loyal and they're willing to buy from you. But the problem is you take the piss on so many occasions. So there's just so many weird and random things that, again, it seems to be the top, but again, as I've said throughout the video, it's an outsider's perspective looking in. I would love to actually have a conversation or just do an interview with someone, with the chairman. I really would, because I recommend you go look up his preamble before the report, because it really does make you think that, the board meetings at GW just seem to be a massive circle jerk. It really does, and it's incredibly worrying. And for us who love the game, the last thing we want to see is GW go under. Because, again, the wargaming hobby would not be as big as it is today without GW. It would still exist, but it would be pretty much nothing. It would still be the persona of, it's 40-year-olds plus with, the big woolly jumpers. But yeah, it would be an absolute shame if that happened, and that's the last thing I do, because GW do so much good stuff. They do excellent models, excellent fluff. The rules, while I do heavily agree, should I say, that the rules are a lot unbalanced. The thing is, though, the rules reflect the army. You can almost take off the front cover and give, army-specific rules to people, and they'll be able to say, oh, well, that's an Orc rule, that's a Tau rule, that's a Space Marine rule. Because that's how good they are when they do write rules, but the problem is they don't bloody playtest them. So, when it comes to playing a greater game, all of a sudden, you've got this, new codex out which says, well, the Tau can now do this, and the Eldar can now do this. And you're like, wait, what? So, yeah. That's my sort of second little GW rant over. I don't know if I'll do any more. I might do some battle reports maybe in the future, now that I've got my my Orc army up and running. I may even do once it's all sort of fully here, I'll maybe show it off a bit.